Welcome back to the channel, friends of the West and seekers of shadowed truths. Today we're plunging deep into the ancient fires of Arda to answer a haunting question. What was Sauron's true weakness? And how can it be found by studying the downfall of his master, Morgoth? This is no mere tale of good versus evil. This is the anatomy of power, corrupted twice. And to find Sauron's fatal flaw, we must first descend into the abyss Morgoth carved into the world and climb back up with knowledge the wise barely dared to whisper. Long before Sauron forged the One Ring, he was but a lieutenant. Meren the Admirable, servant of the mightiest of the Valar, Melkor, later named Morgoth. In the Ainulindale, we're told that Melkor desired to bring into being things of his own imagining, to be lord and master of what Ilúvatar had created. This lust for domination marked the seed of his fall. But more telling was the flaw that grew alongside it: his inability to preserve what he dominated. In Morgoth's ring, it is made clear that Morgoth spread his own being into Arda itself, seeking to make all matter a reflection of his will, thus weakening himself immeasurably. He did not merely corrupt things, he invested his very essence into them. This is critical. Morgoth, by dispersing his power into Arda, into the iron of the mountains, the bitter cold and the flame, made himself vast, yes, but diluted. By the time of the War of Wrath in 583 of the First Age, he could no longer even hold bodily form without great effort. As stated in the Silmarillion, when the Valar came against him at the end of the First Age, he was taken a captive as a mere thing of grief and malice, crawling and groveling. Morgoth, though once the mightiest, had hollowed himself out. Sauron, watching from the shadows, learned much from this, but not enough. After Morgoth's defeat and expulsion into the void, Sauron went into hiding, yet he emerged again by C-1000 of the Second Age, crafting a more subtle approach, not through brute force, but by subversion. When he took on the guise of Anatar, Lord of Gifts, he wooed the elven smiths of Eregion and helped forge the Rings of Power, leading to the making of the One Ring in C-1600 of the Second Age. But in doing so, Sauron mirrored a fatal echo of Morgoth's flaw. To dominate the bearers of the lesser rings, Sauron poured much of his native power into the One. Like Morgoth, he bound his being to matter, and though his act was more precise than Morgoth's diffusion into all of Arda, the effect was the same. He became dependent on a single artifact. His spiritual potency was enshrined in gold and fire, and thus Sauron could never again be whole without the ring. But here is where the thread twists further and darker. Though Sauron was more measured than Morgoth, his pride outgrew his caution. The One Ring was his answer to Morgoth's mistake, but it was also a repetition of it. Sauron centralized his power not across all matter, but into a single object. More efficient, yes, but also far more vulnerable. The ring became not merely a tool, but his very soul externalized, a binding of spirit to gold. As noted in the letters of J.R.R.R. Tolkien, letter 131, Tolkien writes that the chief power of all the rings alike was the prevention or slowing of decay, a form of domination over time, a defiance of mortality, just as Morgoth once defied the music. Yet therein lies the same flaw: dominion without understanding. Morgoth sought to control the world but could not create. Sauron sought to master will but could not comprehend the hearts of the free peoples. His tools were fear, deception, and coercion. He could never inspire true loyalty. Thus his dominion was always brittle, always in need of reinforcement. Even when the Nazgûl bowed to him, it was not from love or conviction, but slavery to the rings. Compare this to the response of the Eldar, or the resilience of the Dunedain. Elves like Galadriel and Gil-galad perceived Sauron's foul presence even while he walked in fair form. Men like Elendil and Isildur resisted him in open war. Unlike Morgoth, whose overwhelming power shattered kingdoms and cowed entire nations, Sauron had to persuade before he could destroy. That alone reveals the limit of his strength. His greatest weapon was never the ring. It was trust, and once that was broken, his defeat was set in motion. The forging of the One Ring in 1600 of the Second Age did grant him temporary supremacy, but it also sealed his doom. For once it was sundered from him in 3441 of the Second Age by Isildur's hand, his power collapsed. He endured in a formless, shadowy spirit, but never again could he reclaim his full strength without the ring. And though he returned in the Third Age, his form was no longer fair, and his influence, though vast, was anchored to a single vulnerability. The mightiest of all the Dark Lords after Morgoth was reduced to a phantom whose very existence depended on the survival of a trinket. And here lies the crux. Morgoth lost his power by giving it too freely to the world. Sauron lost his by hoarding it too closely to an object. This unraveling is not merely tactical or metaphysical, it is spiritual. For in Tolkien's legendarium, evil is not only a matter of domination, but of disruption of harmony. In the Ainulindale, we see that all discord begins in music. Melkor introduced themes not his own, seeking to surpass the others, and his song clashed with that of the other Ainur. But Ilúvatar responded with deeper, richer music, a theme of utmost beauty, as it says in the Silmarillion, revealing that even rebellion could be woven into the greater pattern. Sauron, like his master, failed to understand this. He believed the music could be mastered, that will alone could bend it, and yet every step he took to dominate the world only hastened his downfall. When he persuaded the Númenóreans to worship Morgoth and turn against the Valar in 3319 of the Second Age, he believed he had secured his place as ruler of Arda. But the destruction of Númenor was not just a punishment, it was a correction of disharmony, a resetting of balance. As recounted in Akallabeth, the Silmarillion, Eru himself intervened, altering the world, removing Aman from the circles of the mortal realm, and showing that against Ilúvatar, even the greatest of Maiar are but dust. It is essential to recognize that Sauron's fate was never to become a new Morgoth. He could not ascend to that level of cosmic threat, for he was a lesser being, and he had already tied his essence to the fate of Arda through the ring. Morgoth, in pouring his might into the physical world, had dispersed his soul across matter, the Morgoth element, as Tolkien called it in Morgoth's Ring. But Sauron compressed his being into one vulnerable locus. Thus, while Morgoth's shadow lingers in the very foundations of Middle-earth, Sauron's was destined to be utterly vanquished when the ring perished. This is why Frodo's journey is so vital, not just as a tale of courage, but as a metaphysical necessity. In destroying the ring, the free peoples did not merely defeat an enemy, they unwound a binding. They severed the tether that anchored Sauron to this world, and because he had no power outside that anchor, he was diminished, as Tolkien wrote in The Return of the King. And his spirit passed away and forever lost. In truth, Sauron's greatest weakness was his refusal to trust anything beyond his own will. Where Morgoth sought to mar the world out of jealousy, Sauron sought to reshape it into a machine of control. But both failed because they misunderstood Ilúvatar's gift, that even in the face of ruin, Arda was not made for domination, it was made for song. As we peer deeper into the tapestry of Arda, we begin to see that Sauron's fall echoes not just Morgoth's, but the broader destiny of the children of Ilúvatar. To understand his undoing fully, we must examine those who stood against him and those who almost joined him. Let us turn first to Númenor. When Sauron was captured and brought to the island in 3262 of the Second Age, he played his most cunning role, seducer of kings. He corrupted Ar-Pharazôn, the last king of Númenor, turning the proud legacy of Elros into a parody of Morgoth worship. The fall of Númenor in 3319 of the Second Age was thus not just political, it was spiritual. Sauron sought to sever the line between men and the divine, to poison their hope of life beyond the world with the fear of death itself. But in doing so, he created his own worst enemy, the faithful. From their line came Elendil and Isildur, and from them, in time, Aragorn, heir not only to ancient royalty, but to the unbroken spirit that refused to bow. The elves, too, form a mirror to Sauron's delusions. While he attempted to control time through the rings, the elves sought to preserve beauty and memory, but not for dominion. This is why Galadriel, when offered the One Ring in 3019 of the Third Age, rejects it. She perceives that to accept it would be to become beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, but empty. She sees that power without wisdom leads to isolation, and that, in the end, even the fairest tyrant is doomed to wither. In The Mirror of Galadriel, she says, "I pass the test, I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel." Her words stand as the direct antithesis of Sauron's ambitions. And finally, the fate of men. The race most tempted by Sauron was also the race he most feared, for their mortality is not a curse but a mystery even the Ainur do not fully grasp. In the Athrabeth, Finrod, Andreth from Morgoth's ring, Finrod says, "It is one with this gift of freedom, that the children of men dwell only a short space in the world alive, and are not bound to it, but leave it soon." And he wonders whether this doom of men is not punishment, but a preparation, perhaps for some purpose beyond Arda itself. Sauron, who feared death above all, could never comprehend this. To him, death was defeat, but to Ilúvatar, it was hope. That is why, despite his cunning, his dominion was always doomed. He ruled by exploiting the fear of death, while the free people stood by the hope of life beyond the world. Thus, the true power in Tolkien's legendarium is not found in rings or armies or towers of black stone, but in resilience, humility, and the grace to let go. So now, at the end of this path through shadow and flame, we behold the full shape of Sauron's weakness, not as some forgotten secret, but as a truth written into the very fabric of Tolkien's mythos. He fell not because of Frodo alone, nor even because of the ring's destruction, but because his entire purpose was misaligned with the music of the world. Morgoth made the world a prison by diffusing his evil into its very bones. Sauron made it a cage by attempting to control every will within it. Both fell because Arda, though marred, was not made to serve the will of one. The lesson Tolkien offers is subtle but profound. Evil undoes itself when it cannot see beyond its own desire. Morgoth did not understand love, and Sauron could not comprehend faith, and so they were undone by things they could neither wield nor destroy: hope, sacrifice, pity, and courage unlooked for. As Tolkien wrote in the letters, the domination of the ring was only by the suppression of other wills, which is wholly alien to the spirit of elves and free men. The final victory, then, was spiritual as much as it was narrative. In 3019 of the Third Age, when the ring fell into the fires of Orodruin, the world did not merely lose a tyrant, it was healed of a long illness. The spirit of Sauron, once so vast and terrible, dissipated like smoke in the wind. He had no anchor left, no creation that could hold him, no servant who could reforge his power. He had invested everything into a tool that was never meant to last, and in so doing ensured his impermanence. And yet, the shadow lingers in memory. Just as Morgoth's corruption still seeps through the bones of the earth, so does Sauron's ambition whisper in the halls of men and the hunger of tyrants. Tolkien's brilliance lies in this, that his villains are not just monsters, but mirrors. In the struggles of Morgoth and Sauron, we glimpse the temptations of power in our own world. But we also see its defeat, by mercy, not might, by humility, not domination, by the quiet endurance of those who bear burdens not of their own making: Frodo, Sam, Galadriel, Faramir. Each rejects the ring not because they are without flaw, but because they understand something the Dark Lords never did: that to truly love the world is to let it be free